So today, me and my little spider friend are going to put some MFT style holes in my workbench. Now, after watching a few different videos on YouTube and doing a bit of research, it would appear that the holes need to be 96mm centres apart, and the holes are 20mm wide to take all the different accessories. So I don't know why 96mm is chosen. I've had a look around and I can't see any good reason for this. In fact, one of the videos I watched from Rag and Bone Brown, who has some really good content, I've watched pretty much all of his stuff. He did a similar style table, and he did his at 100mm for ease of maths, etc. So I was actually thinking I would go with the 100mm or turn it into 4 inches actually, because I prefer working in feet and inches. But the way that I have it in my head that I was going to do my holes, it really didn't matter what size I did because there'd be no maths involved. So the first thing I did was rip down a couple of scraps of plywood I have lying around at 96mm wide. So I set my combination square to 48mm, which is half of 96, and drew a centre line down both pieces of ply. Now, when I initially built my workbench, there's a video for that, I'll leave a link in the description. I checked the 8x4 sheet for square and they were all pretty much spot on, so it didn't really matter too much what corner I was going to work off. Also, a sheet of 8x4 ply with the holes already CNC'd in was £130 plus delivery on eBay. So given this sheet was only £32 at Wickes, it seemed £100 saving could be made just doing the holes yourself. So with my spring dividers set to 96mm, I marked off where the first hole was going to go in the first piece of ply, squared that line across so I was able to mark where the first hole would go on the second piece of ply. Now, with the second piece of ply clamped into position, I was able to take the spring dividers and then mark from one side to the other 96mm centres. With the spring dividers being so sharp, I was able to give a little push at each point, which was going to give a nice little reference for the drill bit, a little guide to help make a nice start. So then I squared the lines across from one side to the other before I used the spring dividers again. This was just going to be an extra double check just to make sure the lines were going to be exactly right from one side to the other and 96 apart every which way they could possibly be. So again, as I moved the spring dividers from one side to the other, I gave an extra little push just to make a little start line for the drill bits. So very carefully I drilled pilot holes through the first and second sheet of ply and actually going straight through the bench. Ideally I would like to have done this at the drill press, but my drill press cost me 40 quid at Screwfix and I can't get it exactly 90 degrees in one direction. Probably a classic example of buy cheap, buy twice. But saying that, I've drilled enough holes in locks, doors, etc. in my lifetime, so I guess I'm fairly accurate with going through at 90 degrees, square, plumb, whatever which way you want to look at it. Well, certainly more accurate than that Screwfix drill press, that's for sure. So making sure that the bench is nice and clean, I unclamp the first piece of ply and carefully move it over and line it up with the front edge and clamp it down nice and tight to the second piece of ply. So with the first piece moved into the new position, I double checked with the calipers just to make sure we were all spot on and everything seemed good to go. The middle clamp was also going to help the fact that I have a bow in my workbench top. This is due to the fact that I left the center support rail out when I initially built it, because I knew for sure wherever I drilled my holes I was absolutely going to catch that rail. So I decided I would leave it out and pop it in once I'd done the MFT holes. So now it was really just a matter of drill, drill, drill. There was going to be 204 pilot holes going all the way through. Obviously each time moving the jig over a little bit, making sure it's all nice and clean, trying not to go out of square. So at this point I decided just to check how square we was keeping from one side to the next using my trusted B&Q T-square, which I've owned for years and years and years and has stayed square through all the abuse it's had. So before I went too much further, I couldn't help myself and I decided I had to drill a couple of test holes, 20mm test holes, just to see how the bench dogs I'd purchased would fit. So as you can see, they fitted in there absolutely lovely, so super pleased with that. Now I did drill underneath the workbench, not quite halfway through before I drilled the top, just to make sure I wasn't going to get loads of tear out. Finish off all the pilot holes was just a matter of drill, 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 drill. Have a bit of a clean up to make sure that we could move the jig over without any interference with chippings and dust. Move the jig over, clamp, drill, drill, drill. Quite a boring job, but just looking forward to the outcome really. All the pilot holes drilled and the top cleaned off. The worst part of the job, lying underneath and drilling halfway through with 20mm holes, getting completely and utterly covered in dirt and dust, but really needed to be done. Otherwise, if you just drilled straight from the top, you'd get terrible tear out. Now what you didn't see on camera was the 20mm Forstner bit that I used to do the first 2 or 3 holes. When I started using it again, I think it was about the 5th hole, it just became pretty much next to useless, and it was the first time I'd ever used it. And that was a box of drill bits that I got from Screwfix a while ago, and all the other bits I'd used had been ideal really. So I had this bit in my van I've had for years that I use in an impact driver to go through joists, and I didn't think it was going to be up to the job. First couple of holes I did, it did smoke a little bit, but it seemed to bed in. They're sort of like a dumpy auger bit that fits into impact drivers with a threaded end that pulls the drill bit into the work. And when they're brand new, you can barely stop them from pulling through joists or whatever you're using them for. But in the plywood there, it seemed to pull through halfway, stall, and then pull through again through the holes I'd done underneath. So, and the more I used it, the sharper it seemed to get. So that was happy days really, because there was another 204 holes to drill. So with the 204 underneath and the 204 pilot holes, that was over 600 holes of drilling. Now at this point the battery went flat. That's a 5 amp hour battery that I started with, which wasn't even charged. It wasn't freshly charged for the job. Just pulled it out of my van. I don't know how charged it was. I mean, it wasn't flat, but kudos to the battery for doing that many holes before changing. The only battery I had in the garage at the time was the FlexVolt 54 volt one, so I popped that on there, which they're not ideal on hand tools really, because they're quite a heavy battery. But definitely going to be enough power to get the job finished. So there's a little bit of a close-up of all the holes all finished. Super pleased. They all look lovely and uniform. So time to try out the bench dogs. I got these from benchdogs.co.uk. They were a pack of 4 40mm and 4 12mm bench dogs. I think they were 25 quid. Now, I bought these about 4 or 5 weeks ago, so they've been sat in the box waiting for me to pull my finger out and get these holes all drilled so I can give them a test. Now, the thing I'm most looking forward to using, I think will be the most useful to me, are these 3mm protectors. So they'll hold the work off the top. They've got little rubbers on the top that I guess will stop the work from sliding around. So it will stop me sawing into the worktop with my plunge saw. So I think they're going to be really useful. Save me putting scraps of wood underneath like I normally do. So now I'm just going to check for square between the ones I've laid out. Now, to be honest, it really wouldn't be the end of the world if they weren't perfectly square, and I'm sure that they're not anywhere near as accurate as a CNC machine. But with my builder's square and my T-square, everything I tested seemed to line up perfectly fine. But for what I'm going to use it for, it really wouldn't be important. You know, if I'm working to the nearest inch or two, I'm sure they'll be close enough. So here's just a little close-up of the bench and the dogs, and these are the protectors. So there's 3mm silicone pads on top of the 3mm, so giving you a 6mm raise off the bench. I think these are going to be particularly useful, to be honest. Now, I bought these fixed clamps from Banggood a few months ago. They were £29. I watched them and a few other bits after watching a few of the Chinese series from Hooked on Wood. I think the Festool equivalent are around £100. So yeah, this is the first time I've used these. Super easy to use, and they clamp that piece of wood, that piece of ply in really lovely and tight. So yeah, they seem like they're going to be a good addition as well. And anyone who's seen my video on my homemade panel clamps will know that I made the bolts at a 96mm centre, hoping that they would fit into the holes when I got around to doing this, and they do just squeeze in. The bolts are just about going to go in there, so that's happy days. They're going to be more solid when gluing stuff down. Now, I'll leave links to the dogs, the clamps, the drill bits and any of the videos in the description below. If you found this video interesting or useful anyway, please hit the like, subscribe, share, notification, all that fun stuff. Really would appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.